the luxury of self-destruction to be self-aware. Why my mind malfunctions into this reverse? Smile, I walk to get a drink from the machine. Why my mind malfunctions? I, the luxury of self-destruction to be self-aware.
Hello, everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Rachel Vitullo. I am the global brand artist for 11 Australia, and I'm so excited to be live with everyone today, showcasing my signature blonde and warm blonde formulas. We are going to get right into the video. I actually have some pre-done mannequins that I'll show you as we go through, so then there's no time waiting for development time. This is our beautiful model, Alison. The reason why I chose to showcase starting on brunette hair is everywhere in the world, apart from where I am here in Australia, is transitioning into warmer weather. Traditionally, coming out of winter, going into summer, around winter time, a lot of people do like to celebrate a little bit more darkness and depth in their hair. And then the moment it starts to get warm again, everyone's like, okay, I need foils again. I want to be light and bright and beautiful. So I wanted to showcase where to start from when you're working on a darker depth on a strategic blonde placement when applying your highlights and your foils in. So this is the beautiful Alison. We are not going to waste any time at all, and we are going to dive right into the foiling application. I'm going to mix up 9 levels of lift lightening powder and 6% 20-volt developer. Later on in the video, when it comes to time for me glossing and zone toning, the formula will come up so anyone can screenshot that if they need to later. But we are going to get started and mix. So I'll put my apron on because safety first with all of our clothing, obviously. So I'm wearing the most amazing apron from 11 Australia. And if you haven't got one, it is important that you do because the compartments just save your soul when you are colouring. And they're also quite flattering too, which is nice. I have all of my equipment here to the left of me, so you won't see a lot of the mixing, but I'll show you the consistency as I go as well, which is nice. So I'll take my weighted bowl on my 11 Australia scale, and we are going in to mix the 9 levels of lift lightning powder. I am doing a teasy foil technique, and this is essentially a full head lightening. So whenever I go in and do a full head of lightener, I will start off with 50 grams of powder. I don't ever do more than that. I am a little bit more of a quicker, faster colorist, I'd like to say. So working with 50 grams works well for me when I'm doing a full head application. So it doesn't oxidize and sit in the bowl too long. If you find that you're just starting out foiling and it takes you a little bit longer, which is okay, my best recommendation is to work with 30 grams of powder at a time. And then we are going in with our 6% developer. With the 9 levels of lift lightening powder, you can work on either a 1 to 1.5 or 1 to 2 mixing ratio, just depending on if you like the consistency a little thicker, you go into 1 to 1.5, where if you like your consistency a little bit looser, you go in with 1 to 2. I personally prefer a 1 to 2 when I foil. So a 1 to 1.5 is great for if you're doing a 6-week regrowth, right, and having that little bit of a thicker consistency. And if you're working on a lot of hair like I am today, and you really want to make sure that you saturate the lightener, a 1 to 2 is a fantastic ratio to work with. So I've just mixed that in, and you can see that once again, that consistency is really nice and loose. So I know with working on a teasy foil technique that this is going to help saturate and color every single strand that I need to inside my foil. Put that here, and let's bring over the beautiful Alison to start off our foiling. I'm going to use my 11 Australia wide tooth comb, tail comb. Sorry, my 11 Australia tail comb. The one thing that I love about this tail comb is how long that pintail is. So it allows me to work on bigger sections of hair, like for instance, the TZ4 technique that I'm doing today. So I like to, and I like how thin it is too, and that point is really sharp, if you can see. So you get a really, really nice straight line when you work with it, which is amazing. When I do any kind of foiling technique, I like to separate the hair that's in front of the ear away and work on the back section as a whole. The front of the ear, the hair from the front of the ear to the hairline organically likes to fall forward. And then the hair from the back of the ear into the back likes to generally fall back. So when working on something that's a little bit more lived in or working on a TZ foil technique, it's really important to understand how the hair falls. So I like to separate right at that top of the ear and then work on the entire back section first. So I'm going to clip that away. Beautiful. So that is all clipped away, ready to go. So like I said, we are going to work on the back section first. So taking the back section as a whole, like so. The first section that I'm going to take around the nape of the neck is a V section. So I take from, depending on how low that neckline is depending on how high you want to start your first point. So angled from on the mannequin tail goes center of the ear, and we're going to angle that down to the center back. And I like to do that on both sides. And I'll explain why when I have clipped this hair up and out of the way. So you can see here, I've created a V section in through here. The reason why I've done that is around the nape of the neck, in this section in through here, the head does start to round a little bit. So the hair that sits right at the nape of the neck organically likes to fall onto the shoulder as it comes down. So working on this V section in through here is going to give that beautiful saturation and pop as your client wears her hair on her everyday life. So you get that really nice coverage at the nape of the neck as all the hair's out. So it allows everything that you do from the front all into the middle legs and ends just all blend really, really well. For the purpose of timing, I'm going to scatter the sectioning pattern a little bit more, but you will see pre-toning and also end result, and you'll see how everything falls really beautifully. Depending on the intensity of the color and the amount of saturation that you want to create is going to vary between leaving out some hair underneath and just coloring the top section, or taking this entire section as a whole. So if you're wanting to create a strategic color application and placement, always think in mind the end result right in the beginning. So if you want an intensity of color without having to put in a lot of foils in, this first section in through here, I would actually take as a whole. And then so you get that beautiful pop of color in on the underneath. If a client's wanting to have just some soft subtleness appear in her hair, you can go in and weave a little bit of it out, and that gives a really nice soft result. So I'm going to take the entire section, come in a little bit closer so you can see. I'm going to take this entire section. Now, also, depending on, once again, the amount of saturation that you want to create is going to vary between where you start to back home and tease. So I might actually move on the other side. That works a little bit better. So depending on where you want that saturation to be and how high you want your lightener to be, for anyone that's beginning, the best thing I like to do is and I'm not sure if you can see on the camera, but wherever you see that there's a lot of new growth, so a lot of these shorter little pieces within the hair is exactly where you want to do your back combing. So I like to keep a really nice amount of tension in the mid lengths and ends, and then I like to go in with my comb on top, and it's just a really gentle flick up. I'm using barely any tension, and that's just lifting up those little hairs in through here and then pushing all the way up to the top. So you can see already that a lot of that new growth has been pushed up out of the way. We're going to secure our 11 Australia clip in. My comb is pushed in underneath, and I push that all the way up to where my back combing is. The reason why I like to clip it in is it doesn't disturb any of the back combing work that I've done. So when you go to paint hair, which I'll show you, it's a lot of tension and it's a lot of motion on the hair. So you want to make sure that all the beautiful back combing work that you've done doesn't interfere and start dropping down. Take a piece of foil. I will lean over. Taking my lightener powder. And what I like to do first is saturate in on that mid length. So I know exactly where I want that saturation to begin. So wherever you want that really intense blonde to pop is where you start to paint first. This also allows the hair to stick to the foil really well too. From this point here, we're going to feather up and fuse out. And what this is going to do is remove that harsh line that we've created first. So I'm working on a like back and forth motion. So brushing up and rocking back and forth. And you can see I'm creating a little bit more of a zigzag. So creating that zigzag pattern is going to give a really nice fusion as well as the back comb. The worst thing to do is to rely on the back combing that you've done. If you back comb the hair, you're pushing the hair up in all different directions and ways and strengths, and more hair's going up than others, but that's not going to give you the guarantee that that's going to fuse out your line for you. So the combination of a zigzag painting in through here, as well as your back combing technique that you do in here, is going to guarantee a really, really nice seamless effect, which you'll see on my pre-toned mannequin. So I've gone in, laid another piece of foil in over the top. So we're not folding any of the hair either. And that's going to give a really beautiful, even tone. Now we're going to jump onto the other side. And once again, you just want to gently brush up those little new growths. Push all the way up to the top. Take your clip again. Clip that in and just secure all of that back combing in. This will also help save your life at the basin area, so you're not over back combing. And then, you know, I think we've all been there before. You do a little bit too much back combing, you're at the basin and you're struggling a little bit to get it out. This is just a really, really nice way for all the hair to fall out too. So once again, create that saturation in on the mid lengths and ends. And then we're going to go through and once again create that really beautiful zigzag pattern. It's creating organic highs and lows within the highlights that you do, which is really nice. So the motion that I'm using is a rocking back and forth motion in on the hair. The tension that I have on the hair is very, very minimal as I'm doing this. I'm allowing the lightener powder to organically connect itself to the hair and fuse out. Lay another piece of foil over the top. It's always really important to seal off the entire foil once again. It just stops that oxidizing as the color goes to lift and lighten and allows everything to lift evenly, which is beautiful. So our V section is done. So people ask where to go from here. As I was mentioning before, this from the center back section, as you go to work towards the ear, the head is rounded. So it does mean that even though this hair naturally falls back, there's still a slight curve that happens. So working into the center back to bridge the work that I've done from here to here, I'm going to just take a horizontal section. Once again, this is going to help your strategic color work to allow you to not need a lot of foils in the hair, but enough for purpose. So I would say color for purpose. So always look at how the hair's falling. Do I need to add a foil in here? Do I not? How's it falling against the hair that I've previously worked with? Working with a teasy foil technique like this, it's always important to think about the end result that you have right in the beginning as you're coloring, but then also look at your previous sections to see, okay, there's a bit of hair overlaying over this beautiful section that I've done before, probably going to leave that out and allow a little bit of depth between each foil that I work with. So working in this center section, and I'm going to weave from the underneath. So weaving from the underneath creates a soft zigzag in the hair underneath, once again allowing for that really beautiful seamless color work from the work that I do to the work that is left out. So weaving from the underneath, and some people may ask why I'm not weaving through. For the purpose of this end result, I want to create saturation and, like I said, a strategic placement. Weaving through gives a really beautiful soft tonal variation look, where weaving from the underneath gives a really nice flat canvas to work with. So then wherever you paint, you get a really nice amount of saturation. Saturating into the mid-length and ends, like we've been doing, and then once again fusing up. So creating that really nice zigzag pattern. You see sometimes a V pattern being painted, which I like to do a V pattern when I hand paint and use the 11 Australia 6 levels of lift lightning clay. I do like to work in V sections with that. But with this result today, because I'm working on Alison, who is a brunette, and Alison, her needs, wants, and desires are to be blonde today, working in on that zigzag pattern on the top is just making sure that that lightness is starting as high as I possibly can too. So giving her the most coverage possible, which is nice. So working in that V section is going to give you 2 high points, where working in that zigzag section is going to give nice saturation in on that mid length. So then you'll have that beautiful organic natural root into that soft fusion of something slightly lighter, into that heavy saturation, into the mid lengths and ends. So as you work up the head, you're going to continue to create that same sectioning pattern. And as you can see, this beautiful Alison had a test strand before, because we have to make sure we test strand our mannequins before we get into it. So you can see, once again, I've worked on my next V section. So if you're unsure where you're going, once you've created your horizontal section in on the head, this is what I like to call restart. So once your horizontal section's in, you start all over again. So you create your V section again, and then your horizontal section. V section, and then horizontal section. Depending on how much hair your client has, depending on how much saturation they want, depending on if they have a lot of natural working in there or if they already have some lightness already in there, is going to really vary between how many V's and horizontal lines you do, how short you take your sections. So take this sectioning pattern and allow the personalization to any client that sits in your chair. So as I was saying before, it's really important to identify the hair that you're working with, the end result that they want. It's in the back of my mind the entire time that I'm coloring. So with this next section, you can see that it falls directly underneath that first section that I did. It's very important to weave once again from the underneath and allow some of that natural depth to fall through. Once again, depending on how much that you want is going to depend on how saturated the mid lengths and ends are. As I was mentioning before, if they want a lot of blonde or if they want just a little bit of amount, I always like to look, once I've weaved that section out, I always like to look and see, okay, this is what's going inside the foil. This is what's not going in the foil. How is that looking? Is that enough? Is that too much? Is that going to feel like she's blonde enough, or is it going to feel too blonde? So it's really important each section that you work with, take the hair out, weave it out, have it ready to go, have a look, what's going on here, what's going on here. I even sometimes like to recheck once I've done my back combing too. So going in and fusing out that new growth. We want to keep that new growth nice and strong. And then taking in my sectioning clip. So even here, I like to look, okay, I've removed a little bit of the hair out of the way. How's that looking to the hair underneath? Is that enough? Do I need to take it out and put a little bit more hair in underneath? So just watch each section that you do and just see if that's enough, too much. Need a little bit more, need a little bit less. It's nice. A foiling pattern like this keeps my brain active too as I'm coloring, which is really good. So once again, going in and creating my zigzag pattern. All the way into the ends. Sealing it off. Done, ready to go, move on. So as I was mentioning, I'm not going to go and do the whole back section. I don't think everyone's sit and see me watch foiling for an hour and a half. But like I said, you would essentially take that all the way up to the top, your last section being that horizontal section and allowing that hair to fall organically, which is nice. Working in on our side panels. Let's go to this side. This is where the fun and the personalization really comes into play. Some clients like a really bright pop around their front. Some clients like some lightness starting directly from the root area around the hairline. Some clients like to have still a little bit of their natural depth in on that root line. It's going to, once again, vary between the client and their needs, wants, and desires. I'm going to showcase around the hairline doing a root foil and then going in and doing a teasy foil directly underneath it. And I'll explain exactly why we're going to do that. Once again, with the root foils, it depends on how intense your client wants that pop around the front to be. I've had some people ask, oh, do you just do 3 foils back to back or do you do 2 foils back to back? And I just explained it's all in how the client's head organically likes to fall. So I really look at how the client's hair is falling. Sometimes if they've got a really low hairline, I know that a lot of this hair is going to fall. A lot of the hair is going to fall forward. So you can see already on beautiful Alison that the hair's organically liking to fall forward, which just means if I go in and just do 1 root foil and then go and do my teasy foils in this sort of direction, as the hair goes to fall, I lose a lot of that face framing that I've done. So in a situation like this, I would essentially go 1, 2, and then a teasy foil in that same direction to allow, once again, as that falls, which you'll see the end result, as that falls, you just get, it's not lost and you don't lose all that beautiful hard work, because we all know foiling can take a little while. So the hairline, the mannequin's a little bit a hairline challenge, but that's okay. We all love a challenge here at 11 Australia. What I like to do with a hairline is allow that full saturation all the way through. So depending on the hairline that your client's working with, is depending on how many foils you're going to need in order to get that really nice coverage in through here. So on Alison today, I would essentially do 1 foil here, and then I'll go in and do 1 foil here, and then I'll go in and do 1 foil here, and then 1 foil in on the top. And that just gives a really nice continuous hairline color. So I'll go in and I'll do the hairline here. Now, some people ask, do you weave the hairline? Do you slice the whole hairline? Once again, it's really depending on the end result for your client. More often than not, you're going to see me do a very, very micro weave. So then when that hair gets pulled back, that little bit of the depth that sits in around that hairline area just helps fuse in for that organic look. If some clients like to wear their hair up and down, I'd probably recommend a really micro weave first. So then when they pull it back, they're not thinking that they have an on-scalp liner. So it's still a really, really nice soft result. So I'll go in and just do a really gentle micro weave. Once the foil's in, I will show you how that's looking. So I take my piece of foil. I slide the little lip of the foil in my tail comb, and that just helps once again with really nice tension. So now you can see that really nice soft micro weave in there. Now, shall we see if I can foil backwards? I think so. Yeah, not too bad. Okay. So we're going to go in and paint in on that root area, and then we're going to pull that through to the mid-lengths in the end. Once again, I'm going to take another piece of foil, apply that directly over the top. In this situation, Alison is completely brunette, so I want to make sure that there's no folding of the foil and creating any crease work as well in the color that we do, which is nice. So I'll go in and I'll do the entire root area first. So I'll go in and do the entire hairline. This just makes sure for me that everything's covered. I have the whole hairline done. I know there's a really beautiful saturation around there. I'm in a really good spot. Then I can go through and do the personalizing of the teasing after that, which is nice. Let me go here. Oh, that's better. So I'm going to go through and do the entire rest of the hairline. And while I have you, on this YouTube channel that you are watching me right now, 11 Australia have released a brand new video with 11 Australia Colour, and it's 11 Australia Colour brand story, which I was so grateful to be a part of. I had such an amazing time with Jamie Lee, who's also in Australia, with Connor, who's in Europe, Melvin, who's in Europe as well, all four of us together talking about our brand history, the pillars that help build 11 Australia Colour. We talk about Australian heritage. We talk about the easy to use and understand 11 Australia Colour. I would recommend everybody jump onto that after you've watched me, obviously. When my live is over, that's your first point of contact, depending on where you're watching this in the world too. If it's very late, you deserve your rest. All right, I'll go in and do the rest of this hairline foil. And then we will be good to go into our strategic backcomb placement for this. I'll just go in and do another little weave. Apply that in. Once again, always think about the saturation that you're creating, how much intensity you want in that hairline. Okay, now we're going to go into our teasies and why I place them where I do. Around here, I like to separate from the recession. So this point in through here, I like to work with this section first and then this section that I see in through here. Once again, because of the organic fall of the hair. So I've separated Alison at the recession point here. Just readjust. So bearing in mind, this entire hair is foiled, and then we're working in through here. So I like to work on a pie section. So what that means is a short point here and using this pivot point here at the recession to pivot around like a pie or pivoting, whichever language you guys like to use globally. But having one reference point, which is right at the recession, and using that as I go around. And what that's going to do is create an intensity point. So essentially like a back-to-back section in that one area and give that really beautiful point of light as it comes down. With this section, I like to take this section as a whole. So if you think about the hairline foil that you do, it's a very fine foil. It's not a lot of hair inside the foil. It's just a very small amount. So I do like to take a back-to-back foil in the next one, in my first TZ foil that I create above my hairline foil. And that, once again, is just strategic placement of bright colors. Once again, working in that high-low technique, fusing it out. If I want it to sit even that little bit higher, what I like to do is completely clean my brush. So completely clean my brush, take that and fuse that even more. And what that's doing is going all the way up to where that backcombing is and allowing that lightness to sit as high as possible. So like I was saying before, you would essentially fan that all the way around. When it comes to the top of the head, I like to take, once again, the center point, or wherever your client likes to part their hair, is going to be my point of intensity. And then in there, my point of intensity, and then in there is where I'm going to fan around. So once again, what that's doing is creating that really nice root foil that we did in the front, and then just behind it is going to be just off that base area, and that saturation is going to come through. So I'll show you the sectioning that I take there. So from this point into here, everybody can see that. So you can see that is going to go back to back, lay over that beautiful section, get that fine root foil in with that saturation of that color in the mid-lengths and ends, which is really nice. I'm unsure if I can see in here at the moment. If anyone has any questions as well, there is a chat, and if you're watching this live, there is a chat box underneath for you if you want to pop in any questions. I can see, and I can see Jamie Lee. Hello, Jamie. I was just, if you were watching, talking about our brand story that's out on this exact platform right now. If you want to see mine and Jamie Lee's face over and over again, that's where we will be. So once again, creating that saturation into the mid-lengths and the ends, and then we're going to fuse this up. So my first point of fusion is right on that part line. I'm going to fuse this. So you can see on the mannequin, you've got a root foil right here, and then you have a next TZ foil underneath. So you know exactly where that's going to go. Just off that base area, you've got your root foil and then in and fusing that out in through here. So as I was saying before, you would essentially go and pivot all the way around until you're on this part section. So I'll show you as if you were right up at the top of the head, and you're doing your last point. So we can just pull this all up out of the way. and we're working on our last top section in through our part, which I'll probably come this way for now. So working on that last top section of the part, there's beautiful Alison underneath all her hair. So we'll say for reference, because like I said, we want to get into the fun stuff, the glossing. This last section is where we're at. Once again, we want to make sure we're working right along that part, weaving the underneath, soft, gentle back comb in on that top section, using your sectioning clip again, locking that in and securing that in, and then going in with our foil, and we are going in and fusing that all the way up. So once again, working on that high section and working on this zigzag pattern is really nice to get that saturation and get that level of lift all the way up to that part area. One second. Dropped my comb. Things we all know and love at the hair salons and being in the salon all day. I think towards the end of my own day, I end up dropping my comb 1 or 2 times, but that's all good. Okay, so let's act like foiling is all done and all developed. This is my magic trick right here. You ready? 1 out, 1 in. I know being in a live situation and watching videos, we don't have time for the development. So here is one I created earlier. I was having a funny laugh before thinking that I was on a cooking show. Or talking about putting something in the oven and then taking the oven, taking it straight out, being like, and this is it 6 hours later. This is essentially it many hours later, as I have pre-prepped my color model here already. So I want to preface, this model is the exact same model mannequin that I did in the beginning. So you can already see before toning how much lift we have in the hair. So we've got a really beautiful amount of lift, and now it's time for the fun part, the glossing. Regardless of the work you do, sometimes you need to, as you've brushed out, sometimes you may need to fuse out any line that you see, or sometimes you want to soften out the level of lift from the natural base into the lightness that you have into the mid-lengths and the ends. So it, once again, really just depends on the client, the needs, wants, desires. I did want to show you using a zone toning technique and going in and fusing out a regrowth line or fusing out a foil line if you're in a situation where you need to and you want to bridge the gap between the natural depth into the lightness that you have. And then also talking about tapping in on the root area if your client doesn't want that bright blonde directly in on that root area. At this point in time, I will get the formula up on the screen and I will explain what I've done and why. That shouldn't take too long to pop up. But when that formula comes up on the screen, I'll explain. Oh, here we go. Formula up on the screen. So this zone 1 or root stretch or root into mid, new growth, whichever you like to call it, section, I'm going in with 7NG and 6MT, 7.03, 6.7, which I've just dropped, so 1 second. Okay, so going in with these two. Now, for those that know me, they know that the 6.7, the 6MT is my favorite, one of my favorite liquid colors in the demi-permanent liquid range. It's probably used maybe 80% of my coloring, which I love. So I'll talk you through why I've gone and done one versus the other. I wanted to still celebrate warmth. So I wanted the gold to be the hero in this situation. So working in with a 6.7, and working in with a 7NG is going to make sure that it's knocked out a lot of the, making a natural color has like a combination of gold, red and blue. And so what I wanted to do is with the 6MT and the 7NG is knock out the red in the primary colors that create natural and still hero and celebrate the gold that is in that color. So this is still going to be a very warm color, which is nice because that gold is still celebrated in there. So the gold's not knocked out because green counteracts red. So it's going to knock out any of the red that I see and just celebrate that beautiful gold that we need. When you are glossing and zoning over natural, over highlighted hair, my best recommendation for you is if you've highlighted the hair and it's lifted all the way up and it's really beautiful, you're at like a 9 level or there's a lot of yellow representing, knocked out the orange, all of that, all the way up to this yellow. If you're then zoning and dropping back down, I always recommend go half a shade darker than your target shade, because coloring back over highlighted hair, if I wanted a 7 level and I go in and put a direct 7 level on, and this is with in any situation at all, if you're at a 7 level wanting to go onto a 7 level, and if you're at a 9 wanting to go to a 7 and I just use just a 7, over pre-lightened hair, you never really get down to that 7 level. So I would always recommend go half a shade darker than your target shade to receive the level that you want. So that's hence why 7NG and 6MT. Because you could always intermix, if you're at a 7, you could always intermix the 6MT and an 8MT to create a 7MT as well. I'm having everyone jump onto the MTs after this. So I'll go in with an equal part. And then I'm going to go in with the 4% cream activator. If you've lifted the hair all the way up and you want to go all the way back down, 4% is your best friend. So I'll go in and use 4% when I'm changing levels again. Otherwise, I'll go in with 2% if I'm doing tone on tone. So I'm just going to show you a few sections of this glossing before going in and showing you the end result. So this is the consistency of the cream activator with 4%. That actually looks quite nice on the camera. And we'll go in and we'll do our glossing service, okay? So I can see here on Alison, the lightness starts quite high. It's all the way up here. So if you think about it, her lightness in her teasy foil starts really high, which is beautiful. But if you're wanting to soften out and fuse it out, the best thing to do is take your wide brush. I go in with my big brush with 11 Australia color when I'm doing this. I just find I get a lot more saturation and I can cover the hair a little bit easier. So I'll go in and paint exactly where that lightness starts. I then go in and take my next section, flip it over, paint the other side, and then the other side again. So you can see I'm nowhere near. Actually, what I might do is take that formula image off, if we could, and then that'll give a little bit more space of screen. There we go, beautiful. So you can see I'm nowhere near that hairline yet. And I'm just working in with the hair that falls. Now, it's really just depending. If, for me, my client wants to have a lot of blonde and a lot of saturation, I actually don't do this step all the way through to the roots, all the roots all the way through the hair. If you think about it, if you go in and add in that first color that I did, if you go in and paint that in on the nape of the neck, what you're actually doing is shifting that blonde down. So all of these panels and sections that you've worked with underneath, you want them to start still as high as you did when you foil, and then do your glossing service just in on the top. So then as all that hair lays, you're not actually eliminating the work that you're doing, which is nice. So I just generally do that first zone right at that recession point, and then just take a soft wet brush and fuse that out. Now the hairline. which can make or break the color that you do if you put it in the wrong spot. So what I like to do is work on the exact same foiling pattern sectioning that I took. Take that exact same sectioning pattern and go in and tap that in. So in around the hairline, which I'll bring you all nice and close for. And once again, let's put myself to the test here and see if I can do this backwards. So what I like to do is just take the tiniest amount and just really gently tap that in. So really gently tap that in. Then once again, just take my wet brush again, and I'm just going to softly brush up. Just ever so gently. Brush up and then brush out. And you can see that that's dabbed in on that hairline area really soft. So you'll continue to do that all the way around your hairline. My ends formula, which I'm very excited to share with you, is the, let me grab it, 931, the 9GA, if you can see, 931 9GA and the 9CG. If you have been on this live before with me and Melvin, I talk about the 943, the 9 copper gold, and how much I am obsessed with it. I find that the 943 is the biggest game changer when creating that beautiful, bright, buttery blonde. 943, having that soft coppery, which is barely even there depending on how you use it, that soft coppery hue in the 943 just enhances that shine and the brightness that's in the hair. I add 943 into a lot of my stuff. I'll add 943 in with 1031. I will add 943 with 831. I will add 943 with 703. There is a lot that I love to add 943 into. It's scary if you haven't played with it before because you think your client's going to go copper. But if you use it sparingly, so I would essentially go in and do, say, 30 grams, if I'm going in with 30 grams of 931 or 1031 or 831 or 703, I will go in and do, say, 2 grams or 3 grams. So it's like a 10-to-1 ratio I like to use, which is nice. I need to find the applicator lid. Any mid-lengths and ends glossing, the applicator bottle is my best friend. I find that I get such a beautiful, even result. The application is so fast as well, and it's, you know, aesthetically pleasing on social media. If you've seen me use it before, I love it. So what I like to do is just essentially, we'll work with the section that I've started with. I'll jump on the side. Here we go. So you can see the color that I did before, that beautiful root blend that we've created. And then I'm going to go in and gloss in the mid-lengths and ends here. So going in and taking my applicator bottle, and we are just going to fuse that all the way down, taking your hand and glossing through. So when I am marrying in one section to the other, look at that shine. Still blows me away how shiny 11 Australia colors are. When I'm going into fuse in the work that I've done into the work that I previously did, I just take one of my fingers, my index finger or my pinky finger, and I'm just fusing that previous color into the ends color. If you're wanting this section not to budge, it's always best to go in upwards like this. If you're still wanting to drag that color down just that little bit more, you can go in and fuse up and down like this. You can also take your wet brush again and just brush that through. And then the same thing in with the hairline. I can't wait for everyone to see this end result. It's actually so pretty. So going in once again into the mid-lengths and ends, celebrating that beautiful buttery blonde and just fusing that into the root area. So I would essentially go in and gloss all the mid-lengths and ends. So it's really important to be mindful of when you're working in the underneath. If you've not zoned and done a deeper color in this underneath section, it's really important to make sure you get that coverage underneath there too. It's also important to identify when you need to deposit tone versus when you don't. Sometimes you've lifted the hair and you love what you see. You can just go in with clear, or you can go in with clear and just the tiniest little bit of the 943 if you just want to enhance that little bit more golden hue that's within the hair. Or you can just go in, like I said, clear on its own. If you rinse it, you love what you see, it's beautiful, it's exactly the color that you need, then just put clear over it and give it that beautiful gloss that it deserves. With 11, of course. All right. Are we ready for the end result? My work here is done, so I'm going to take the apron off and bring in the final result. Ta-da! When I tell you, I'm absolutely obsessed with how this color turned out. I might bring over old Alison first so you can get a little bit of a side by side between one and the other. So this is where we started here, and then this is where we've ended up. So you can see, I might take her off for a second. You have such beautifully strategically placed color, amazing saturation all the way through her hair. It was funny when I was coloring this, everyone was like, was that the brunette that you did? And I was like, proudly, yes, it was. So once again, you can see around that hairline area, that tap in on the root, I might come in a little bit more. From tapping in on the root, you can see that you can't actually see exactly where that foil starts and stops. So by tapping in that 703 and 6.7, the NG and the MT, it's just created the softest fusion. So then when, bless Alison in real life, will go to pull her hair back, it's just completely eliminated that intensity around the front. But talking about the application with one foil to the root and then back combing the rest of your foils, you can see how as it lays, you get that really beautiful pop of color. And then the same thing in around that hairline too. So if Alison was in her everyday life and had shoulders, which I'll put her back on here so you can see, if her shoulders were here, when you go to push that hair forward in real-time scenario, you can see that beautiful pop of blonde that will just rest along that collarbone shoulder area too, which is just an absolute game changer. So this is my finished result, and you can see I've gone in and done 30 grams of the 931, the 9GA, and then I've gone in and done 3 grams of the 943, and it's actually just warm. It's not leaning into copper in any sort of way. It's just a beautiful, rich, blonde result, which I love that people are celebrating now. It is absolutely amazing to see people are happy to have warmth in their hair again and celebrate that bright, beautiful blonde color. So that is all from me. Some key takeaways, I think, are really looking at the hair that you're working with, keeping the end result in mind all the way in the beginning and all the way through with your lightener application and where you're placing the color, really identifying how much hair is going in the foil, how much hair is going out, looking at that hairline area. How intense do you want that? Do you want that really bright around the hairline? Do you want it coming directly from the root area? Do you want it just off? Working on your saturation points in around that front and pie sectioning that around in on the top section, and really having your two focal points of bright all the way through. Another key takeaway is play with the 943. It is, like I said, another big hero of mine in what I go to reach for often. So play around with the 943, play around with the 6.7, in with the 703, the 7NG, and the 6MT. Working in with your different drivers of developers, your 4% cream activator if you're lowering your base and you want that intensity of depth, 2% liquid activator if you are working on tone and just intensifying what you see. Thank you so much for joining me on this live. I actually had a lot of fun and like to do this as often as I can. So I hope you all took something away from this and had as much fun as I did. And I hope to see you on the next one. Bye.
The luxury of self-destruction to be self-aware. Why my functions into this reverse? Smile, I walk to get a drink from the machine. Why my functions? The luxury of self-destruction to